Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about the state of South Carolina, where the Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina, Pamela Evette, a Republican, plans to make a special announcement next week. And all indications are that she'll be entering the governor's race for the 2026 elections. Now, I am recording this before she officially enters this race. I'm recording this on Friday, July 11th. So I will not know the official announcement, but I'm very confident she will be joining this governor's race. So I'm deciding to do the video now. South Carolina's lieutenant governor has been expected to enter the governor's race, is set to make the official announcement early next week. Pamela Evette's announcement is scheduled for July 14th at the smokestack at Judson Mill in Greenville, South Carolina. The invitation was not clear about the reason for the announcement, but Evette has been considered a likely candidate for the race to succeed Governor Henry McMaster. If Evette were to announce her campaign, she'd be joining a Republican primary field that includes current South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson, and upstate Senator Josh Kimbrell. McMaster, the longest-serving governor in the state's history, rose to the role from lieutenant governor when then-Governor Nikki Haley stepped down to serve as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations during first President Donald Trump's administration in 2017. After he completed her term, McMaster was then elected to full terms of his own. An early poll conducted back in March gave Evette a slight edge over other Republicans considered at the time to be likely gubernatorial candidates. Evette ended up getting 31% among those surveyed, compared to 27% for Wilson. First District Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who has not officially announced a run but said she was strongly considering one back in January, came in second place at 29%, and then 5th District Congressman Ralph Norman came in at 11%. On the other side, Democratic State Representative Jermaine Johnson recently formed an exploratory committee for a possible run for governor. So this is very interesting. South Carolina is not usually a very competitive state at the general election part, but the primaries could be very interesting here. And with Josh Kimbrell and Alan Wilson currently in this race, the idea of Pamela Evette entering this race makes it even more competitive, because then it would be Evette, the lieutenant governor, going up against Alan Wilson, the South Carolina Attorney General, who you could argue, after the governor, is the two highest name recognition positions you could hold in South Carolina in politics or in the state office, lieutenant governors and attorney general. It is also interesting, noting that Nancy Mace has been going after a lot online at Alan Wilson, the South Carolina Attorney General, in anticipation of her likely governor bid as well. So this has the potential to get very, very interesting here. And Pamela Evette, who's not officially joined as of the time of recording this again, as I mentioned, does have the endorsement of Karen Floyd, the former chair of the South Carolina Republican Party. Two polls that have been done so far for the Republican primary, one from Trafalgar back in March, showed Evette leading at 31%. That same poll, as the article mentioned, had Mace at 29, Wilson 27, and Norman at 11, with 2% undecided. So a very close race to start out, but Evette does lead in that regard. In the first Tuesday Strategies poll, another Republican-sponsored poll from March, shows a lot more undecided vote at 47%, but in this one, Alan Wilson has 21%, Nancy Mace has 16%, Evette has 7%, and Ralph Norman has 6%. So this primary is still very much wide open and very close, and likely, if President Trump were to make an endorsement in this race, would likely pick whoever ends up winning, given how close it is. If President Trump, however, decides to stay neutral and not endorse in this primary could go down literally to Election Day without having a clear favorite in this race if Evette, Mace, Norman, and Wilson all join. Because the early polling shows this is a very close, under the margin of error, primary to start off with so far. So this could be very interesting to see how this all plays out. On the Democratic side, Jermaine Johnson, the state representative from the 70th district, is the only Democrat formed an exploratory committee right now, and will likely be the Democratic nominee unless someone else hops in. But Cook Political Report, Inside Elections, and Saddle Crystal Ball all have this race listed as solid Republican or safe Republican. Race to the White House has it listed as likely. And when you look at the election history for South Carolina, it makes a lot of sense. Looking at the presidential race in 2024, Donald Trump just won it by 17.9% against Kamala Harris in a very big blowout victory. So a safe Republican state in that regard. Back in 2020, it was a little bit more competitive. Trump won the state by 11.7% against Joe Biden. In 2016, Trump won the state by 14.3% against Hillary Clinton. So 2024, this is actually the reddest South Carolina has been in the last three presidential elections, and the most red it's been Going back even in 2012, where Romney won it by 10.5%, McCain won it by 9 points in 2008, and then Bush won it by 17 points in 2004. So 2024 was the most Republican South Carolina has voted since 2004 with George W. Bush. At the governor level, it's been pretty similar. It voted for Henry McMaster for re-election for a second term in 2022 against the Democrat Cunningham by 17.4%. Henry McMaster getting 988,501 votes, Joe Cunningham getting 692,691 votes, 58% to 40.7% or so. Going back to 2018, Henry McMaster won here in a more of a competitive election, a likely Republican victory for McMaster by 8 points. Here, McMaster got 921,784, or 921,342 votes, to the Democrat James Smith 784,182. In this one, McMaster got 53.96% to James Smith's 45.92%. Now, 2018 was a very strong Democratic wave year, and 2026 is supposed to be a similar election environment. The question will be, do the Democrats do well enough to match the margins of 2018, where nationally, Democrats ended up winning the national governor vote by about 3%, they ended up winning the House vote by about 8.4%. Can the Democrats reach those heights for 2026 remains to be seen, but if they could, that could show maybe South Carolina could be more competitive at the governor level than it has been historically. At the Senate level, it's also interesting because Senator Tim Scott won re-election in 2022 by 26 points, a very large margin. But Senator Lindsey Graham, who in a lot of approval polls is not very popular, he only won against the Democrat Jamie Harrison by 10.3%. And what coincidentally was also the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history at the time. Jamie Harrison and Lindsey Graham set the U.S. fundraising record for this Senate race. It's possible South Carolina can have an under 15% margin of victory for 2024. But it's really contingent on the national election environment being so anti-Republican and pro-Democrat that could happen. In 2022, for instance, it was about an even split. Democrats won 49.3% of the national governor vote. Republicans won, I believe, about 49.05%, so about 49.1%. So roughly about 0.25%, separating the Democrats and Republicans at the 2022 national vote. So going up to the 2018 levels of Democrat plus 3 is a very big difference. However, there are some differences from 2018 than in 2026. In 2018, Republicans had governors in Maryland and Massachusetts. That will not be the case in 2026. Those have both gone Democratic now. However, there's also a Democratic governor in Kansas, in Nevada, and that likely will not be the case in 2026 either, as there's already a Republican governor in Nevada, and likely will be a Republican governor in Kansas. So the numbers may not be the exact same in terms of national percentage vote, but it is possible we could see a potential shift in the governor's race in South Carolina. If we compare it, we can shift the map a little bit here. Let's just say we shifted about 5 points towards the Democratic side. This would be Democrats doing better than the expected numbers. If that were to happen, South Carolina would fall under 15% margin of victory and put it into the likely Republican category. So if the Democrats go from winning the national governor vote by like 0.2% to Democrat plus 5, which would be better than they did in 2015, that would be indicative of them getting a more close result in South Carolina than from 2022's election results based on that for 2026. Will that happen? Will the Democrats win the governor map by 5%? I'm not so sure because there's more Republican incumbents and Republican pickup opportunities, like I mentioned, in Nevada and Arizona, Kansas, Michigan, Wisconsin. It's possible there won't be as many Democratic incumbents either. For instance, Gretchen Whitmer won't be running again in Michigan, so that margin of victory will likely be smaller. So the national margins may not line up, but could South Carolina be under 15%? I would say so. I would say it's certainly possible that could happen in 2026. Right now, though, at this point in time, I did have South Carolina as safe Republican in my most recent governor election prediction, and I am going to leave that as safe Republican until we get anything out of the governor's race that says otherwise. Maybe more national generic ballot data or polling data out of South Carolina showing a more competitive race could change my view or opinion on that. But right now, I think this starts out as safe Republican, whoever ends up winning this Republican primary. However, the question is, which Republican ends up winning that primary? Well, that's starting to get very interesting, as 2 Republicans are already in the race. Pamela Evette would make it 3, and potentially Nancy Mace or Ralph Norman could make it 4 and 5. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts. Also, make sure to stay tuned. I post several videos like this one every single day, so you're not going to want to miss those. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in a future video.